Welcome to the STR Data Lab.
Hello and welcome to the STR Data Lab. I'm Jamie Lane, Chief Economist at AirDNA, and I'm joined here today by a really interesting guest. We've got Eric Goldreyer, the CEO and founder of Savvy. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
For those that aren't watching the video, it looks like you are at a ski resort. Is that where you're at today?
I am in Breckenridge, Colorado at our vacation rental.
Nice. How's the snow?
It's been good. Yeah, it's been good. I haven't had time to get out and enjoy it, but it's been nice.
That's awesome. So one, I've got a ton of questions. You've been in this industry for so long. You've seen a lot in terms of how the sort of industry sort of got going and this sort of interaction between OTAs, property managers, and now you've sort of done a relaunch of your I'll call it a booking platform, but you can explain to me how you describe it of Savvy. So maybe we'll start with, could you give a little bit about your background for a listener that maybe hasn't heard your name before, and then we'll go into Savvy?
Of course. So it goes way back. Let me just say that. Back when the internet was really coming together in 95, my wife and I loved to stay in bed and breakfast and use guidebooks. And by the time you read through every single listing, found one that you liked, you called it, it was out of business or it was booked because the book was researched 2 years ago and, then published and you finally get it. And I thought, okay, here's an opportunity to create the largest place in the world of information on bed and breakfast and make it easy for people to find and book a bed and breakfast. And it was really that simple. And with a lot of hard work and a lot of luck, I mean, we built the leading website for bed and breakfast, bedandbreakfast.com. We had the largest property management software in the industry, about 10,000 bed and breakfasts, not Airbnb, but actual bed and breakfast that used our PMS. And we built the first central reservation system, or CRS. So we gave the mom and pop innkeepers the ability to distribute like the flagged chain hotels did on the major OTAs that were being created at the time. Rich Barton was starting Expedia, Terry Jones was starting Travelocity. You had, kayaks coming along, Hafner, et cetera. And so we built the CRS and it was a lot of fun. And then Homeboy came along and Brian Sharples, Carl Shepard, they're like, hey, we'd really like to acquire you. And I'm like, we're having fun. We're not for sale. Like, no, we'd really like to acquire you. And my kids at the time were 12, 10, and 7. And I'm like, you know what? I could spend time with my family. And so I did. So I sold it 2010 to those guys, took some time off, spent time with the wife and kids, which was amazing. And, you never get that back. But as an entrepreneur, you're sitting there and you're like, okay, ideas just are, running through your head. So I started a totally non-travel business called Fun Air. So we manufacture inflatable toys for mega yachts, think slides that are 30, 40 feet tall, et cetera. And it's fun, still have it. It still goes. It's the leader in its space. But about that same time, started a company called Turnkey Vacation Rentals. So first money in, on the board, not on the operating side. But we built the second largest property management company in North America. As you probably know, sold to Vacasa 2021. I wouldn't say that went as we had hoped it would, but in being on the board and having, quarterly board meetings with Carl Shepard and John Banzak and TJ Clark and the group, got to sort of experience what vacation rental managers and property owners were going through. And at the same time, about 2012, we bought a 12-room inn outside of Austin on 88 acres. And it's now 20 keys. And so I've got a couple of vacation rentals. So I've always loved hospitality and just had the opportunity to really see where it's gone from, 95 to now. And one of the things that we noticed was, wow, the fees and the costs to book vacation rentals, the distribution costs for those players was really going up while overall hotel distribution costs were coming down, right? You remember the HRN back in the day, Hotel Reservations Network, right? A call center became hotels.com. And, you saw the Expedia, the net rate stuff that was running 30% was coming down. And now I think hotel distribution on average runs maybe 15, 16%. That same time, vacation rental distribution went from a flat listing cost on home away or vacation rentals by owner, a la Verbo, bedandbreakfast.com, to a fee-based, commission-based platform as well. And so just thought there was a better way to do it, a more efficient marketplace, and saw all of the frustration with the sort of entrenched big corporate providers, and felt that travelers, and no pun intended, but savvy travelers, were ready for the next site, the next opportunity, a better model. And so here we are with Savvy. That started as a purchase of a company called B&B Finder back in 2019. It was honestly, there was no tech stack. It was a WordPress site. We were buying a brand, and we were buying some customers, and just an entrance into the space, and it was inexpensive. So we got in, we put in a tech stack. About a year and a half ago, we finally launched into the vacation rental space. So in the last 18 months, we've added nearly 2,500 property managers and 150,000 listings in North America to the site. And we rebranded to Savvy a couple of weeks ago. So that's maybe not the 30,000, the 25,000 foot view.
Yeah. So with the name Savvy, and you sort of implied it, the savvy traveler, the savvy property manager, how do you define like a savvy, maybe let's start with property manager. Like,
Sure.
and you've worked with property managers, you were on the board of one of the biggest property management companies. So in your mind, like, what is a savvy property manager?
I would tie it back more. I mean, some of the turnkey stuff, but more to the end that we own, right? As a individual property owner or a property manager managing a group of properties, I mean, what are the sort of things that you're focused on? Distribution and lowering your cost of distribution, because that lowers your fees to your homeowners, gives them more revenue, and prevents churn, which is another big pain point for property managers, right? And ultimately providing really hospitality, which is what our industry is about. And a savvy property manager is going to, one, provide great hospitality to their guests, because word of mouth and repeat guests are a big book of business, or they should be, for a legitimate property management company. Secondly, you're going to take care of your hosts, but third, you're going to try to lower your distribution costs. And a big part of that, and provide a higher level of hospitality. That's hard to do when you have an intermediary between you and your guest that's owning that customer relationship, right? So the big OTAs, when you book on Airbnb or Vrbo, you're Airbnb or Vrbo's customer, right? And then down the line, you're the property manager's customer. So savvy property managers want to lower their costs, and they want to build their direct booking book of business. So they can provide a higher level of hospitality, so they can upsell, cross-sell. I mean, when I'm talking to a property management company, instead of booking something on Airbnb, they can better understand what my needs are. They can put me in a better location. Maybe they've got a location that's not up yet, but they've signed an agreement with a homeowner. It'd be perfect for me and my group, whether it's my family, my high school buddies, or whatever. And then they also can say, hey, what else do you need? What can we do for you while you're here? You need groceries, you need massages, you need to cook, you need tours. Do you need, you need to go scuba diving, whatever. So we think savvy property managers realize the value of that direct relationship, and they're going to leverage all distribution points to bring in reservations, but they want to move share from their lower hospitality, lower touch, higher cost channels to their higher touch, higher hospitality, lower cost channels.
So maybe let's talk about costs. So like I'm a host. I list on Airbnb, Vrbo, Booking.com. Like think like my all-in costs, like given and host fees, guest fees, like I'm paying typically like 15 to 20%.
Right.
So what does that look like as a property manager coming over to Savvy?
There's none, right? So our model is, you're like, wait, I better talk to this guy now because he's not going to be in business long. Our model is the old model. I wish I could say I'm this, brilliant guy that's bringing this whole new trapezoid to the industry that's going to, change everything. We're going back to a proven model, and we allow property managers to put all of their properties on our site absolutely free. If they want more exposure, they can upgrade a property on a monthly basis when they need, maybe they've got a new homeowner that they just onboarded. They want to show some quick reservations. Well, try getting that property higher in placement on the big OTAs. It's a black box. They have no control. With us, they can pay a flat monthly cost for a month or a year or 2 months, whatever they want, and bump them up in the algorithm. So we still have to meet the traveler's needs. Otherwise, we can't provide any value to the host, right? But within the algorithm, right, if we've got two competing properties that both meet the need of the traveler, and one is a premium listing and one's a free standard listing, we'll put the premium listing above it, and they're going to get more exposure and therefore more reservations. So, their cost goes to 0% if they're on our site for free. And if they're paying a flat monthly cost, depends on how many reservations they get, right?
So, and this is a question I get from investors into the OTAs all the time of like, when are the sort of booking sites going to get into sort of, and promoted listings of where you could, as a host, and pay to get your listing higher up in the algorithm. And the sort of response I always give them, because it's what they say, is that they're probably not going to do it until they figure out a way to not have the sort of rankings dominated by large property managers, that they want to see individual hosts sort of coming to the top, and they see that as the sort of the best experience for guests is if they're getting connected directly with individual hosts. And obviously, getting a lot of individual hosts to connect to your platform is going to take time, effort. And Airbnb's done an amazing thing with what they've built in terms of getting all these hosts to sort of direct list onto their platform and sort of drive demand through it. And then you go back and look at Vrbo when they really allowed property managers to pay a little bit extra, promote their listings, and that drove sort of really significant bookings to them, and allowed them to show up top of the rankings, and I think was a great opportunity for property managers to really differentiate themselves with a relatively low cost. So
Yep.
how do you sort of think about Savvy sort of running off of that business model? And it feels like if you start it from the beginning, and that can be great because it sort of puts everyone on the level playing field. It gives an individual host like, all right, I was paying Airbnb 15%. Now I can pay and get ranked to the top and compete with the big guys from the beginning. Like, how do you see it sort of playing out?
Yeah. So two things. Great comment. First of all, I would say that we don't allow for rent by owners on our site.
Okay.
Right. We only work with property managers. So a part of our value prop to travelers is the listing is going to have a higher probability, or it's not a guarantee, that it's represented as it is, right? That if you show up at 11 o'clock with your family in tow, 11 p.m. that is, and the Bluetooth lock doesn't work, there's someone to call, right? Because the bro that owns the place isn't, down out partying with his buddies or whatever, right? So we want to de-risk vacation rentals for travelers and give them a peace of mind. And so we only allow professionally managed properties on our site, no for rent by owners. So want to just differentiate that. Secondly, I think on, the listings and does it then give the big guys a better opportunity? At the listing level, I think it all goes back to the algorithm. And if you give people the ability to bump up from a free standard to a paid, but that's only when the filters that have been applied make that property one of the properties that is in the result set, then is going to filter out bigger PMs, if you will, that maybe, have a higher ADR. And they're like, you don't want to go to Austin, Texas, for example, wherever, Park City, Breckenridge, Colorado, and see all of these listings at the top that are $3,000 a night, right? So you just have to provide the tools and have the algorithm that does as good of a job as possible as providing the traveler with what they're looking for. And within that data set, if a PM has decided, I need to bump this guy up, great. Then they can get higher in that search result. They may not get to the top because just because they've paid, they may not be the best result still, right? And if we start throwing a bunch of trash just because they've paid, and by trash, I don't mean they're bad properties. I just mean it's something that travelers not looking for, then ultimately we're not doing a good service for the traveler, which means we can't provide a good service to the property manager.
So now I want to flip it to the other side because, and obviously you're running a two-sided marketplace, right? And I get asked all the time, like, how should I book my vacation rental? And I think like a lot of people in the industry, I say, I can go and use the OTAs to shop and then either Google image search or like search the name and then go find the direct booking site and book it direct. And there you're going to get the best price. You're going to get the best and opportunity and have a sort of relationship, the right relationship with your property manager, with your host. So flipping it to the other side, savvy guests do, and why would they use Savvy? And then how do you expect to compete with the bookings and the Expedias and the Airbnbs that spend billions of dollars on performance marketing to make sure whenever anyone's searching for a vacation rental that they get sort of pointed to one of those sites? And it seems like a tall order.
The old two-part question, huh? Yeah. No, I mean, I think you're totally right that that's what savvy travelers do, right? The data, I think it's Skift's data, shows that 68% of travelers showroom, right? Just like you go to Best Buy to look at the TVs and then you buy it, online. Savvy travelers go to and that's 68%. That's huge. They shop and then they try to book it direct. What we're doing is we're providing that site for them, because when you book on Savvy, you're booking directly with the property manager. You're not booking with Savvy, right? So we're a book direct OTA, if you will. So basically, we're positioning our site as the site where you can go, you can find a property. And when you find a property on our site and you give us dates, we show you the Savvy price, and then we show you the Airbnb price and the Vrbo price for that property for those dates right alongside of it. It's publicly available information. We're making it easy for the traveler to make a decision. And then they want to book. We're going to link. If you want to book with Airbnb, great. Link over to Airbnb and book it. You want to book it with us because you saved $700-800? Great. Book it with us, and it's going to go through straight to the property manager. I think, how do we compete? We obviously don't have the revenue or the funds to go out and buy all that traffic. We are sort of operating principle, and I hope we're right, is that savvy people want other people to think they're savvy, right? So if you're savvy and you know of this new app or website that saves people hundreds or thousands of dollars per trip, you're going to want to tell your friends and your family about this new site or app. And thankfully, we are in sort of a sexy industry, right? People talk, it's not like we're selling razors. You're not at your, Thanksgiving family reunion and you're at the table and everyone's talking, well, so have you tried a new razor lately? No. But everybody does say, well, hey, what are you doing this Christmas? Oh, we're going to go, get a vacation rental in Costa Rica, or we're going to go to Sedona and get a vacation rental or whatever, or an Airbnb or a Vrbo. We're confident that savvy travelers, and it doesn't need to be 68%. Give us 5%, give us 10%. We think savvy travelers are going to be at that dining room table with their family, or at that happy hour with their friends, or on a trip with their friends. And if they've heard of us, they're going to go, guys, are you kidding me? Have you not heard of Savvy? you save like hundreds, thousands of dollars. And we think word of mouth is going to be big for us. We think social will be big for us because that's sort of like an amplified word of mouth. And honestly, we think press will be big for us. There's been, I mean, Google it. There's been so much negative press around the big OTAs over the last not year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. We think coming out with a new offering in the space that better meets travelers' needs will get some ink, to use an old term. None of may not be in print, but you know what I mean. So we're counting on press, we're counting on social, we're counting on word of mouth. We're not planning on going out there and buying a Super Bowl ad.
But it makes sense if you like talk through that process that I just said of like go to the OTAs, find the best properties, and then go and search for the direct booking sites. If there was a spot that had all the direct booking sites aggregated all into one, and you could go and search for your criteria and then book and then not have to go through the rigmarole of finding, and how do I book directly with them? Like that. And once you get enough and people sort of that were doing it the old way of like, oh, essentially I can do it the old way, but it's just super simple now to and find those sites like and that there could be some real traction there.
Totally agree. As I mentioned, we've got almost 2,500 property managers in the first 18 months with the old B&B Finder brand. And frankly, focused solely on the supply side of that two-sided marketplace that you mentioned, right? We are just now starting to go out to the traveler side of the marketplace with what we think is an order of magnitude better brand than B&B Finder, which sort of felt like it was chasing, Airbnb, and it's an old brand from the late 1990s. So we've written APIs to the top 15 PMSs in the industry. We've got another 5 that we're launching by the end of this quarter. It's very, very easy for property managers to participate with us. It's free. It doesn't take us weeks or months to onboard. It literally takes 15 minutes. And so there's really no downside risk for property managers. And so we feel that supply side acquisition will only increase as more property managers hear of us, realize what we're doing, and they want to join the movement to build that alternative OTA, if you will. Because it's in their best interest, right? Unless you're, Casago, Vacasa Evolve, you don't have the money to go out and really build your direct business like a Hyatt or a Hilton or a Four Seasons does, right? And so the industry, property managers need what we're building, and hopefully everyone we've spoken to gets it and sees it, and they come on. Once we speak to a property manager, they're on board. It's just the ones that are like, okay, wait, they're all too good to be true thing, but it's not, right? If we can get 20% of the market to be on our site for free, and you probably know the data better than I do. I think in 2030 there's supposed to be maybe 30 million vacation rentals globally, approximately 29, 30. If we can get 6 million listings on our site for free, that's 3 times the size of Verbo. That's a pretty good amount. And why wouldn't you do it if it's free? And then out of those, if we can get 1 in 10 at any point to upgrade, listings, then that's plenty. We don't need to be a $110 billion business.
Yeah. So one thing you do need, assuming, and as a professional property manager, is you need a direct booking site. You need a site that you can send someone to book. And I'd say you've seen, and working with 2,500 property managers, the gamut of like good to terrible direct booking sites.
Yes. Yes, we have. We have. And what we're doing about that is, pulling that booking process onto Savvy. So today, I think it's about 50% of our listings, and we're, working hard on moving it to virtually all. We've got some bed and breakfasts on our website that aren't connected. So that's going to be a res request, but ultimately we'll want the vast majority of reservations on our site to happen on our site. So we'll capture all of your, who's traveling, how many, what are the dates, and all of your payment information. And then we'll process that securely through the API via the PMS to the property manager. They'll process the payment through their standard procedure, just like it had come through their website.
Okay. So maybe just a fun question of like, and what do you see really work on direct booking sites? And given your sort of knowledge around them, like if you had a property manager reaching out to you today of like, all right, I'm going to spend the money around a direct booking site. Like, what should I do? How should I start? Like, what are the things to really make sure to do as I'm getting going? Because I want to be Savvy's number one sort of integration.
Yeah, I don't think it's anything new, but maybe folks haven't heard it. But obviously, a nice, functioning, clean site with really good photos, really good first class UI and UX, not some kludgy designed website, and then a very tight booking funnel or path, right? Make it easy for people to book. Don't make it a 7-step process. And yeah, I don't think there's really any silver bullet there. But it's funny. I mean, think about the property manager space. Property managers didn't all go to Cornell, right? It's not like they've got this hospitality background. It's oftentimes people that lived in a destination where there were vacation rentals, and a friend of theirs is like, "Hey, can you put my place? Can you manage it for me?" And then someone else hears, "Oh, will you do mine too?" And next thing you know, they got 20 properties. So it runs the gamut, as does the websites. I mean, we see websites that literally you're like, wait, am I on, MySpace or AOL here? What is going on? They
Yeah.
have not updated. And that's a bad user experience. And so, we still don't have everyone fully integrated, and we've got to send travelers off our site to make that reservation. But it's no different than had they spent an hour on Google trying to find the site, and then they're on that site. So it's still a better process than having to go do the searching yourself. We're going to send you to that listing on that website to make the reservation. And more of those will happen on our site. So we think regardless of how the booking happens, it's a cleaner process with us. But you're right. Property managers need to make sure that they're upgrading and updating their website and that it's not a ugly experience.
Yeah. Funny story. You mentioned Cornell. And for listeners that don't know, Cornell has like the best and hotel school out there. So if you want to be a hotelier, you go to the Cornell Hotel School. And the a professor had it was like 2 years ago, just to like make the pitch to students that there was options outside of traditional hotels and hospitality, that like this entire sector like actually exists and is now an option for a graduate to go into, and could be a really like interesting option for the right type of student, and given just how fast the industry is going and sort of how demand is shifting in the sort of lodging space.
Well, was it 800 million people stayed in a vacation rental globally last year,
And
if I
there's
recall?
probably doesn't seem too off. Yeah, there's and roughly 12 million vacation rentals out there today. Like, and yeah, you could get to that. So yeah, and it's a growing thing. So like, and like one of the things that and is always out there is like that the book direct movement is really gaining steam, and that OTAs are dying. And then like I run the data and like actually like OTAs are continuing to gain share. Direct bookings are continuing to and get a smaller and smaller share. You talk to property managers and they talk about their sort of fees continuing to grow, their profits continuing to get squeezed. So, like, realistically, and how do you see the competition between like direct booking and OTAs sort of playing out over the next 10 years? Like, and maybe a scenario where Savvy is successful? And then what does the scenario look like where Savvy is not successful? And like, what does that future look like as for someone investing in short-term rentals today?
Yeah, I would say if we're not successful, it's what it is today, right? You've got property managers out there and they're spending money on Google ads, they're spending money on social, and they probably don't know how to do it. So they're paying someone to do social. They're spending money to have a website built. They're getting pricing data, et cetera. I mean, it's expensive to drive direct reservations. It's not free. So I think you just see people continuing to do that and doing what they can to try to carve share out and build their direct business. You think it would grow just from the fact of repeat and word of mouth business. Your book of direct business should grow if you're doing a good job providing hospitality. If we're successful, I think you still have the OTAs, and I think they're big, and I think they still provide a lot of value to property managers, bringing new leads into their funnel and new reservations and, out there sort of creating the industry, right? I love it when I watch the Super Bowl and I see, a Verbo ad and a booking ad and, I see Airbnb ads all the time. That's great for us because it's growing the space. And then people will hear there's a better way to book. If we're successful, I think what happens is we move some amount of share from the OTAs to us, which benefits the property managers and it benefits the travelers. And does it really hurt the big OTAs? Gosh, I wish I hope we can be successful enough that they're like, dang, don't like those guys. I mean, if 68% of people showroom, can we get 20% of those people, which is, 13% of them to come to Savvy? That's a material, meaningful shift of demand. And we've got to build a first-class OTA, which I think we have done and will continue to work on. We've got to add supply, and we've got to provide travelers and property managers with what they want. And if we can, I think we can be successful. Thankfully, it was a different time, but we did it at bedandbreakfast.com. We did it at Turnkey, and I think we can do it here.
So one thing I love when I'm looking at the Savvy site is that the brand for the property manager is front and center. Like
Absolutely. As is their phone and their email. I mean, we want travelers to be able to communicate directly with professional hosts. That's how you get the best hospitality. Look, Airbnb, and you even said it 5 minutes ago, Airbnb has built an amazing site and they've created a category, even though they came along, 13 years after David Klaus started Verbo, which was about the same time I was starting bedandbreakfast.com. But they've got an awesome site. Technology can only displace so much, right? A website can't provide the level of hospitality that a professional host can provide. So we think savvy travelers want that connection. But yeah, I'm glad you like the site. We're going to put the property manager's brand right there. We're going to show all their listings. We're going to send you straight over to their site if that's what you want to do. We're going to let you make it easy to call them, make it easy to email them, make it easy to text them.
my question there though is like, and how important do you think a brand is for a property manager? Like of having a strong brand of like, do you feel like and the right brand on your site and is going to drive repeat things? Like, are you going to allow sort of searching for brand? Like, or is this if they really like your brand, your brand, they're going to find where your direct booking site is. And like, they might not need Savvy. Like, and the risk there, right, is if they're finding the right brands through you, then and they don't need you in the future, and the traffic just does all go direct, or I know, or is there some amount of showrooming that you think will just happen anyway? And
That was a daisy chain of assumptions you had there, Jamie. I would say, look, if we're sending traffic, if we're meeting travelers' needs, like you just said,
yeah,
we're going to win.
Yeah.
Because if we're meeting travelers' needs, we're meeting property managers' needs. And there's going to be enough property managers that want to get more exposure that we're going to make enough of a return on our investment that we will be successful. Brands, Obviously I'm big on brands. Bedandbreakfast.com, Fun Air, Turnkey, Savvy. I think brands are important. For a property manager, I think a brand is important really for repeat and word of mouth. I don't think I'm going to choose a property manager based on their brand, but if I had a good experience with a property management company, then that brand being memorable and resonating and having a value proposition behind it, I think is material. But, your comment a second ago, once I find a property manager, I don't need you, you know, do you travel to the same place every time you travel? I doubt it. So most property managers are not Vacasa, Casa Go, Evolve. They're in a market. People travel around the world. So a property manager will work for you when you're going to Vail, Colorado. Isn't going to work for you when you're going to watch the Super Bowl in New Orleans. It's not going to work for you when you want to go to, 30A in Florida and stay in Seaside. It's not going to work for you when you're going to La Jolla, California. So there's very few national property managers. And I think a property management brand is important. But the reason a site like ours is important is it's just too fragmented. The industry is too fragmented. And so someone like us has to come along and bring it all together for travelers. Otherwise, they're going to have to go showroom on the big OTAs.
Yeah. So given and the sort of time you spend in the industry and that a lot of like listeners to this podcast are and just getting into the vacation rental industry, maybe they've started and they've bought a couple of homes, they're either managing themselves or have and given them to a property manager and looking to buy more. Like if there is one piece of maybe information that and you could sort of dispel of like and maybe something that's misunderstood in the industry, and that like as a veteran in the space, like here's something like people should know about the history of this industry and how it's evolved. Like anything come to mind as I sort of and say that?
No, that's a great question. Probably just because this is the life I'm living right now. The one that pops up to me is the differentiation between hiding fees or not being transparent on fees and having fees, right? I think some of the big OTAs would have you think, oh, okay, we've resolved the fee issue because it's no longer hidden. That's not it. I mean, yes, that's frustrating as heck, but I'm not happy when I go to StubHub or Ticketmaster or Airbnb or Vrbo or whatever, and there's this 15, 13, 18, 20% fee out there, whether it's hidden or not. And so what we're trying to do at Savvy is say, hey, we're going to be completely transparent. But the truth is we don't have the fees. That allows the traveler to create more memories and more experiences with their friends and family that they're traveling with, right? Because now they can use that savings to book a nicer place. Instead of being in Breckenridge, Colorado, they could maybe be slopeside, ski and ski out in Breckenridge. Instead of being in Seaside, they could be at the beach. Maybe they extend their stay and instead of going for 4 nights, they go for 5, or they bring in a chef or take the group to, all of that also doesn't just help the traveler, but that's more revenue that the property manager can now make because they have a higher gross booking value on a nicer property or a longer stay because there wasn't a middleman taking 20%, 15, whatever it is out of that transaction.
All right. I'm going to ask one more question of
Sorry, I got to go. Hey, thanks. What is it?
To reminisce, because I love like hearing the early days of the industry of like being in it. So maybe a question around like, since the early days of like breadandbreakfast.com, like what lessons from the past still hold true for property managers today? And like, what is just completely different from back in 1995?
It's funny, but it seems like it's the same stuff. I mean, what we were dealing with in 95, 96, the first bed and breakfast conference we went to, the California Association of Bed and Breakfast Inns, CABI. 1996, January. I'm standing there and innkeepers are walking by and I'm giving them our elevator pitch, right? And they're like looking at each other like, wait, what's the internet? So that's gone. But if you looked at like late 90s, you had innkeepers trying to build their own website, not just be listed on bedandbreakfast.com, so they could drive direct reservations. And it was harder back then, right? You had to have it hosted somewhere. The tech stack was just more complicated. Programming was more complicated. But here we are, fast forward, 30 years? And you still have that same dynamic where there's still big aggregators of eyeballs driving demand. And so you've got the supply on the other side trying to disintermediate those big channels. And so what we're trying to do is be a big channel, but that's no incremental cost and it's saving them money. And that's why I think that we'll be successful. And it's funny that here we are, that the fact that I'm getting to run this playbook again in this space, it's a lot of the same problems actually still. They've just sort of morphed and changed a bit. I mean, you're not getting an AOL disk mailed to you every week, right? The proprietary networks are gone. So you're not messing with that, but websites are still across the board. And, I remember back in the day when we would talk to innkeepers and we would look at their rate calendar and it was whatever, $180 a night, Christmas Day, July 5th, February, just across the board. Like there was no yield or revenue management. And you'd talk to them and they'd be like, well, it's the same thing. It's the same room. And there was no concept of yielding. Go to any hotel in Vegas and look at a month's calendar. You got $29, $389, $759, same month, same room. I think there's still opportunity for better integration of yield and revenue management tools for those property management companies that are just not the big guys and have that ability, right? So there's still the opportunity for website providers to provide property managers with a first-class website that converts better. It's all the same stuff. It's just more advanced.
Yep. No, it really resonates. It still blows my mind how few hosts use yield management today, how few property managers use yield management today. And given the easy accessibility of these type of tools now, where you can see the data, you can get the data, you can yield it yourself, you can get automations for it, like every PMS.
And you can, but it still takes time. I mean,
and money.
Money and time.
Yep.
So even though the tools have gotten better, you're a property manager and you've got, a broken heater over here and a toilet overflowing over here and payments to make over here and house, it's a lot. It's property management is a business for people that are really good at project management and multitasking and sales and marketing, because there's a lot. It's a lot to do. Yeah. I don't want to be a property manager. Let me just be clear.
Much rather build some.
But I appreciate those that do.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to support them and I want to help them be more successful. Yeah. Ultimately, we want to, back to your question, if we're successful, I think everybody wins. Travelers win, property managers win. So we'll see.
Eric, on that note, really appreciate you joining. This has been a really insightful conversation. If there's anyone that wants to reach out to you, sort of find you, and how would they do that?
Eric, ERIC @savvy.com.
Awesome. Well, Eric, thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.